Welcome to the SEA Center's new podcast, Perspectives. We are a New Delhi-based think tank, and this podcast is a platform for our researchers to discuss technology policy issues in an accessible format.
So, a couple of weeks ago, Deepinder Goyal announced his gravity aging hypothesis, where he said gravity is the main cause of aging because not the main, but one of the primary causes of aging, reduces blood flow to the brain. And so, announced investments in his startup, Continuity Research, which has been looking at this for a while. And this is now maybe the latest CEO to jump on this longevity research bandwagon, but looks like this has been a pet project of tech CEOs for quite a while. And this is just, Deepinder Goyal chiming in and adding to this existing trend. So we'll dedicate this podcast to what we make of the increased interest in longevity research and what we think the implications are. So first, to throw a broad question open to anyone who wants to take it, what do you think is driving this interest in longevity research based on what you know of who's been investing in it and the motivations behind it?
Yeah, Deepinder Goyal is most definitely the latest one to talk about it, but he's not the only one. He's probably the first Indian, but in the past 2 decades almost, we've seen all major billionaires that we know today been either fully or at least remotely interested in the concept of extending lifespans. Larry Page is one name that comes to mind. Jeff Bezos is there. Sam Altman, even Sean Parker, for example, have all been pumping money into this academic exercise, so to say. But it's not just academic, right? In fact, most people probably think it's a vanity project, and maybe, I mean, I'm confident to some extent it is, right? But that's not the only motivating factor. What is also at play is that this industry has the potential of becoming a multi-billion dollar industry, and that is why I think people or billionaires are pursuing it, just at the prospect of building an industry and a business around it.
Yeah,
I think that's I think that's valid what Madhya mentioned. But beyond vanity, I think the whole longevity market is, and beyond scientific pursuit, I think it's a future trillion-dollar industry. And recently, Oxford Economics sort of mentions it, that the broader longevity economy, which would include goods and services and technologies related to anti-aging and all of that stuff, it's estimated to be around a whopping $7.6 trillion in annual economic activity. Now, with that being said, it sort of signals that a lot of these billionaires and a lot of these investors are investing or putting a lot of this money into this sector because it's going to help them make some big money.
I agree. I mean, I've noticed a trend, at least in the beauty industry, where we've gone from makeup products to anti-aging products. And I can see how this is sort of a convergence of that, where we bring in both vanity and technology into it. And I can see how it would be a super profitable industry. I think Brian Johnson is a good example of someone who is really pursuing it. And I think it's mostly for vanity. But I have to wonder how these sort of trickle down to us as consumers of things that are anti-aging, but just as serums, but how we as consumers need to be concerned, in our consumption of a potentially dangerous medical treatment for vanity.
I think what you're saying, Simran, is very interesting because ultimately that's how trends come into being, right? Like that's how norms are defined, that's how shifts take place. And like we've seen how the plastic surgery parallel industry has kind of shaped the beauty standards that we see today. Likewise, this longevity exercise is also going to have some very direct consequences on life as we know it today. And I'm sure, like, okay, why don't we talk about how it's going to expand the existing disparity that already exists? Like, maybe Akib could take that up.
Yeah, I think that's a valid question, and the uncomfortable question that I think as an economist I would like to ask is that who gets these extra years from this longevity exercise that a lot of people are getting into. Now, we already know that longevity is unequal. Better educated, high income people live significantly longer than poorer or less educated groups. Now, there are a lot of research that you can look into, and that says the same point that I'm making here. Now, imagine this cutting edge technology, a lot of these products, a lot of these high price niche products, we know that the main consumers will be exactly the people who are going to fund it, which is the top global 1 to 5%. Now, if these things work, if these therapies work, they're going to extend healthy life or healthy working life only for the rich. Now, whenever that happens, it sort of starts a multiplier effect, which means that the rich are going to work longer, they're going to earn more, the compound on their capital is going to be larger, and then they are going to draw a lot of pensions or asset income for more years, which eventually means that the rich live better, they have better quality of life, and they live longer and healthier as a class. And on the contrary, the poorer groups continue to face shorter lives, which is going to essentially widen the both the income inequality and then the longevity inequality that's already widespread.
Likewise, like adding on to Akib, I believe that the psychology of wealth is basically built on mortality because people have time racing against the clock. And basically, if these people who are trying to build their careers early on, working hours, sleepless nights, this kind of shifts into a behavioral change into the current period of people who are trying to become, say, the next Jeff Bezos or probably Deepinder Goyal. But this also brings out another side that is a crisis for the people who are not getting the benefits. Working, they're already crunching their hours into this short lifespan. Let's say they have to work till 150. So what? They have to keep on living these similar living crisis till a longer life period, adding on to the disparity as Akib mentioned.
Yeah, that is actually so true. Also, what this means for the environment and the resource constraints that we're already faced with. So currently, the projections seem to suggest that the population will stand at around 9.7 billion by 2025. Now, imagine with people's lives getting extended by 20 to 30 years on an average, the impact that this would have on the planet and its resources as it is, like carbon emissions are through the roof. Adding 20 to 30 years of life to an adult person's lifespan is going to basically mean that much additional pressure on our current resources, because the resources are limited ultimately, and they're not increasing at the rate at which people on earth are multiplying and their lives are getting extended. So that's also a concern.
Yeah, I think on that, like the argument that, yeah,
Go
sure,
ahead.
they want to say.
No,
Yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
I think when Madhya mentions there, I think there's a counterfactual argument there that a lot of economists have already made. So what you're saying is that, and a lot of arguments that have been made is that the resource, given the resource constraints we have, it's already going to be offset by the productivity gains we have. Now, the same thing was already predicted in 1978 by Thomas Malthus, where he gave the theory of population. He said that a population is going to grow at geometric progression, and then the resources or the food supply is going to grow at arithmetic progression. Now, where he got it wrong was that he didn't factor in the productivity. Now, the same question applies today as well. It's not the resource constraint that is more worrying. It's how you allocate it. So there's a misallocation risk of this extended lifespan, where the real question should be that it's not that the longevity exercise is bad. It's just that it should be equitably shared between the rich and the poor, and not just hoarded by the few.
Before it becomes actually accessible, it's going to be gatekept by the ultra rich, and
Exactly.
it's going to be marketed as the next luxury good, and it's only going to keep the disparity from being bridged. And
Yeah.
the other impact that it will have is, and ultimately this is a big experiment that's being attempted on humanity at large, right? And inevitably it's going to have some psychological effects, and they're entirely unknown because nobody is focusing their efforts on what this would mean for the society, because like ultimately over the past few centuries we've come into this certain rhythm of life and death, and once that gets disrupted as we know it today, or in the natural form, there's going to be some alterations to society, and that could lead to family structures changing, in the sense that late life parenting is going to probably become more prominent. Multi-generational households are going to be common, with several generations coexisting at the same time, and that's going to have an impact on the psyche of people. And it's important that studies are conducted to find out what that means.
No, absolutely. I think a big part of it is thinking about how social relationships will change, especially in India. We're such a community-focused society. I think there's a lot that we structure our economic lives around in with the domestic lives in terms of, grandparents looking after grandkids when their parents go to work. But what does it mean when both grandparents and parents who now have longer lifespans, age of retirement go up? What does that mean for what childcare looks like in that scenario? And what does that mean for people who aren't able to access longevity treatments? What does it mean when the standard of or the standard that we accept as old, how does that affect people who can't afford these treatments? Do they have to continue working beyond a certain age, beyond where their bodies are even capable of doing that, because they don't have access to those treatments? So yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
what does everyone kind of think of this issue now? I mean, we have a set of possible negatives that stem from this, but there's also a chance that this is something that actually ends up increasing health span while also increasing lifespan, if not now, then later. So on an
Yeah.
aggregate, do you
Go
remain
ahead.
skeptical?
I think here, like, we have to be really, really careful about how we sort of portray this. So I think personally, I think that the whole R&D intensity towards longevity, it's not something bad. I agree that 100% that many of the discoveries that are going to happen because of this R&D are going to spill over to better treatments in wider common diseases, all of that. But we have to be clear about the trade-offs here. As an economist, I think in a world of fiscal constraints, I think the opportunity cost of chasing these extreme lifespan extensions for very few, I think it's non-trivial.